The nowhere is bursting with morbid curiosities. Each game teasing us with the potential for a happy ending, only to snatch it away at the last moment, replacing our adrenaline and hope with despair and heartbreak. So for today's theory, I've decided to explore a topic which offers a flicker of light in our objectively dark world. But I do mean just a flicker. So am I about to reveal some secret happy ending that some of you are silently hoping for? Or am I lulling you into a false sense of security before crushing your dreams in true Little Nightmares fashion? Well, find somewhere to hide, little ones, and we will consider if the motives of the monsters marauding the desolate expanse of the nowhere are really all that bad, or is there a measure of humanity left inside their hollow hearts? This is the domestic theory. But first, the obligatory spoiler warning. This video will of course contain spoilers for Little Nightmares 1, Little Nightmares 2, Very Little Nightmares, and maybe Little Nightmares 3. And of course a colossal shout out to legendary Little Nightmares content creator, It's Just Jord, without whom I would not have even considered making this series. And if you like this kind of content, be sure to check his channel. The link can be found in my description below, because he's been doing this for a lot longer than I have, and you'll get a lot more from his channel than you will from mine. Now, with that being said, let's consider another tiny tearaway that calls the nowhere home. Gnomes are found in every Little Nightmares game, and obviously play a vital role within this universe. Where do these shy, scuttling shin kickers fit into a world where it seems everything and everyone is out to get you? Well, what if we start by thinking outside of the box? If we flip the evidence on its head for a moment and consider that as a gnome, not everyone is out to do you harm. So far, it seems that every gnome we've ever encountered throughout the nowhere has always been indoors. On the moor, in the nest, in the hunter's attic, and most recently, in the admittedly structurally questionable dweller's home, as is evident from the trailer. Why do you think that could be? Surely the safest place for something so small and vulnerable isn't directly under the nose of the nefarious ne'er-do-wells looking to do you harm, right? Right, but therein lies the point. They may not be under the noses of those who wish to do them harm, but instead be welcome in the places that they seem most abundant. Now, I'll ask you to forgive the sloppy structure of the point I'm about to make, but there are many facets to this theory that by themselves are thought-provoking, but together they're actually quite enlightening. So stick with me and hear me out on this. As is commonplace on this channel, I'm going to open with a statement that some of you may agree with and some of you may not. I believe the gnomes are what the denizens of the nowhere might consider pets or domestic slaves. I think they look at them the same way we would look at keeping a pet rat. They're cute, interesting, practically harmless, and they don't get particularly big. Now let's go through some of the areas where we actually find gnomes and think about the inhabitants that they're likely to happen across. The moor is an obvious one. They're created on the moor by the lady, so they're stuck on the vessel whether they like it or not. It's either make do or jump overboard. The lady clearly has no intention of harming the gnomes, otherwise why would she simply create them and then let them run free completely unsupervised immediately afterwards, as is evident in the Residence DLC with the runaway kid, and, if my flashlight theory is correct, in the Depths DLC also. The lady may also have an ulterior motive for this, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. So we've accounted for the lady, but what about the chefs? They're certainly not too happy to see gnomes in their kitchen, and will actively chase them with quite a clear intent of doing them harm. But if we consider my speculation from earlier, the dwellers see gnomes like rats. Some people find them adorable and would like to keep them as pets. Others see them as pests and vermin, and a rat, domestic pet or otherwise, is always unwelcome in a kitchen. Most of the time. So it stands to reason that the chefs are less than enthusiastic about our curious conical visitors climbing out of their cupboards. But what of Roger? If they're considered pets and as harmless as I suggested earlier, then what's Roger's problem with the gnomes? Well, let's think about that. What's Roger's position on the moor? That's right, he's the janitor. called so because, among other duties, he's responsible for sanitation, cleaning, disinfecting, and otherwise maintaining a hygienic workplace. And while we never see Roger vacuuming or polishing anything, we do see that he's quite adept at pest control, exhibited in the series of traps laying around the moor, and by the less than tasteful rat corpses hanging from the ceilings in certain areas. Okay, so Roger doesn't like rats, and as a janitor, it's his duty to do away with them so as to preserve the reputation of the moor. But what's he got against Nomes? Well, nothing. Yes, we see him chase our mischievous mushrooms at every given opportunity, but remember, Roger is blind. He doesn't necessarily know what he's chasing. Given that rats and gnomes sound quite similar, and despite his undoubtedly acute hearing, he's not likely to take a chance. But he doesn't hurt the gnomes if he catches them. Notice how we never see gnomes hanging from the rafters after they've been captured, but instead placed in cages, kinda like you would keep a small animal in. Now, we know that gnomes are created on the moor and why they're so abundant here. But then why are they found seemingly everywhere else? Well, that brings me back to the lady's potential ulterior motive for keeping the gnomes alive. And to discover what that is, we can switch to thinking inside the box. Specifically, these boxes. Throughout the Pale City, we see these reasonably large cardboard boxes with a seemingly innocuous gnome sticker attached to them. What would the purpose of this be? Well, I think that this is to indicate exactly what these packages contain. You see, we know that canonically there must be an existing and at least partially functional postal system, given the amount of letters and parcels scattered throughout the Pale City, particularly in the most obvious place, the post office. But also, we encounter an as yet unidentified resident who seems to be expecting his parcel and accepts it through the letterbox. Fortunately for our little paper bag boy. As ludicrous as it sounds, I posit that the gnomes are getting off the moor by way of special delivery. And before you Google it, yes, most companies will transport live animals in this manner today. In fact, if we look back in time to the early 1900s, yes, I know you're likely sick of me using history to support my theories, but notably, due to vague postage regulations, it was possible, although not entirely acceptable, for people to use the postage service to deliver children. Of course, these days there are several moral and ethical implications to this practice which have much stricter guidelines on what you can or cannot use the post service to send or deliver. But back then, the only outstanding factor used to decide whether or not a delivery was possible was its weight. As long as the parcel weighed under 50 pounds or 22.6 kilos, it was possible to send practically anything via the postal service. Now, if we consider that the average weight of a 9-year-old child is between 49 and 95 pounds, unless they're severely emaciated, like many of these children are, it's still going to be impossible for the postal service to deliver them. They're simply too heavy. But if you turn that same child into a gnome, their weight and dimensions decrease significantly, bringing them well within the threshold of an acceptable delivery and well within the proportions of these here boxes. Which is why we see them left outside houses in the Pale City and arbitrarily scattered throughout the nowhere. Now, there is more evidence to support this theory, and I will get into it, but what I'm going to say next might get a few eyes rolling exhaustively. But I promise you it's very relevant to our theory. Let me explain. You've probably heard of the night janitor theory, but I would like to introduce the wholesome hunter theory. Wait, the hunter might not be all that bad. Okay, let's put this into perspective. The hunter lives alone in the woods. He has no stimulation or human contact. He chose to remove himself from the threat of the signal tower and dispose of his television far away from his lonely cabin. Longing for company, the hunter seeks the counsel of the doctor, or at least tries to replicate his work, that being breathing life into inanimate pseudo-humanoid mannequin men from the fiery depths of Hades, which is why we find the same spare parts in the hunter's attic as we do in the hospital, which he used to build himself a family. Seemingly failing at this task, he opts for the next best option, purchasing a gnome from the lady of the moor and keeping it in his house as a pet. Which seems reasonable, given that when we accidentally happen across the hunter's pet gnome, it skitters off into the attic and takes refuge in the very same box it was delivered in. This may also be the reason we find Six in the hunter's basement, unharmed, entertained, and very much alive. He chose to keep Six as his own and take care of her to the best his isolation adult mentality will allow. Which is why when we make a run for it, he shoots mono. Always mono. He doesn't want to hurt Six, he just wants her back. How would you react if some miniature mass marauder clambered into your house and stole your kid? Now I do have one more piece of the puzzle that I'd really like to share with you all, but first I have a very small request. If you found this theory at all enjoyable, please drop a like on the video to let me know. And consider subscribing if you enjoy this kind of content, because the more people that I know enjoy it, the more of these videos I will make moving forwards. Now, we've discussed the moor and the Pale City, but another place we see a lot of gnomes is of course the nest. Now this one is interesting because it not only ties into the general aesthetic of the nest, but also really well into the nature of the pretender. Think about it. The pretender is obviously very important and very much in control of her precariously perched position atop a physics-defying peak. Herself, or at least those responsible for her, being rich enough to afford a mansion, their very own toy factory, complete with staff, and an overpowered butler. So the notion that she could afford to purchase several dozen gnomes from the lady's lucrative business isn't outside the realm of possibility. We also know that the pretender is quite fond of being surrounded by friends. But like the hunter, she's often left feeling very sad and alone because her touch immediately vaporizes the company she chooses to keep, forcing her to replace them with doll replicas, expertly whittled and designed by her loyal craftsmen. It's reasonable to assume that in an effort to keep herself entertained, the pretender, or again those responsible for her, ordered a bunch of gnomes for her to play with. This could be why we find so many of these similar looking boxes scattered throughout the nest, and why we find so many gnomes scuttling away in all the little nooks and crannies, hiding from their new owner. Anyway, I feel like I've talked on this subject for long enough for you to get a general idea. I've had this theory swimming around in my mind for a while, and I've discussed it in a couple of my live streams, to a moderate degree. But I didn't feel like I had enough evidence to substantiate making a full theory video on it. And as for where the gnomes fit into Little Nightmares 3, well, I guess time will tell. But for now, don't forget to scroll down to the comments section and let me know what you think of the domestic theory. And of course, don't forget to share your own thoughts, theories and speculations, because I do read all of them, and I like using the end of my videos to address some of my favourites, like these. Solar Max says, I think a good theory for a video is exploring the first person view where it looks like Mono nods at Six to drop him. It could be a really fun theory to explore in depth, and I would love to watch it. And I actually entirely agree with this because Solar Max popped into my live stream just the other day and informed me about this theory that I was not aware of. This theory doesn't belong to me, and I don't think it belongs to Solar Max either. I'm not entirely sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but it is a topic that I'm thinking about looking into. Now, I haven't had a chance to look into this yet because I've got so much else on my plate, but I would appreciate anyone that's taken a bit of a fancy to looking into this theory to check it out and let me know. And while I haven't had a chance to look into this theory myself, I want to encourage you guys who have taken an interest in this particular theory from Solar Max to have a little look into this for me and drop me some comments in this video with anything that you find, because I do think it's a fascinating theory. But with it being such a small segment of the game, it's again hard to justify creating an entire video based on that one single event. But if you can substantiate enough evidence and present it to me, then I will happily follow it up and do the research with you guys. So thank you Solar Max for that really interesting theory and a very, very curious topic. Ink says, I don't know if this is a universally accepted theory or if it even has any significance, but I theorize Noon is 12, as in her name, like Six's name, since it sounds significantly close to noon, which is 12 o'clock. Which is absolutely right, and you know what's really strange? As obvious as that sounds, I did not consider that. oddly enough, it actually clicked with me that noon can be like expanded to mean no one before it was revealed in the Sounds of Nightmares audio series, which if you haven't listened to for some reason, I highly encourage you to do so because it reveals loads about the Little Nightmares universe that we weren't privy to before. Now, I'm really glad you brought this up, and I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention as well, because I think I might be the last one here. I think I'm a little bit late to this party. But you are absolutely right, and it could very well have some significance, because we know all about Bandai, Tarsier, and all the other producers of Little Nightmares that pretty much everything we see is probably intentional, or at least could be interpreted that way. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's a really interesting comment, thank you. Sam Blacksher says, everyone at school makes fun of me for liking Little Nightmares music, but it's good though. Now I'm hesitant to make my response because clicking on your profile picture you look pretty young. And of course I have to consider my monetization issues, so I can't say what I really want to say. But it's basically a really short, blunt and rather impolite way of saying whatever. Don't let anybody dictate to you what you are and are not allowed to enjoy. If you think it's good and they don't, that's fine. They don't have to listen to it. It's in your headphones, it's in your ears, and Tobias Lyja is an amazing composer who created some phenomenal music. I personally absolutely adore the Little Nightmares original soundtrack. There is not a single solitary piece of music created in this franchise that I do not enjoy. And if the people at school are making fun of you about it, then that's just more a reflection of them and their own insecurities. And I know that's probably a really cheesy and common thing to say, but again, I can't say what I really want to say. But more importantly, you are not alone. Some of the people at school might not get it, but there are people in this community who do, me being one of them. And don't let anybody's opinions change your view on the things you find enjoyable. I can promise you now that there are people in the comment section below that would 100% back you up. Because guys, I think we can all agree the soundtrack is fire. So thank you Sam for sharing that with us, and don't worry about it my dude. Really appreciate your comment, thank you. And also, a quick shout out to ReaperMaggot, who has an intriguing Little Nightmares theory of their own. But rather than have me explain it, go check it out for yourselves over at their channel. Links in the description below. But that's going to do it for this video guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please observe the obligatory YouTube protocol. Don't forget to ring the bell so you can be notified when I release a new video. And please make sure you leave me a comment because there's a good chance I'll be reading yours next time. But until then, that's game over.